that you always really get the best out of being honest.
Okay, would anyone like to add to that? Lee?
I agree with Gary because, when, you're honest, you sometimes, get rewards and everything. Mm-hmm. And you'd be a better person when you're honest and dishonest.
So you think being honest makes you a better person?
Yeah.
Lois?
Well, if you're honest, then it's always going to make you happier in some sort of way. It could be that, it's getting it off your conscience, it's
These children are taking part in philosophical inquiry, or P4C as it's sometimes called. More and more youngsters in Scotland, in the UK, and indeed in 62 countries across the globe, are using this powerful pedagogy to learn more about themselves and their relationship with the world, and all that entails.
Is there anyone who thinks you could feel guilty anywhere else if you're not honest?
You might be viewing this DVD as an introduction to P4C, or philosophical inquiry, or it might be after training in order to refresh your practice. For those new to P4C, or philosophy for children and communities, the first important thing to say about it is that it's not about philosophers or philosophical theories. It's about an approach to learning that allows people to explore their own thinking and that of others. Practical philosophy. P4C has links to the ideas of Vygotsky and Dewey and the social construction of meaning, making sense of the world and our place in it. Philosophical inquiry is set in the present, here, now, where questions about truth, fairness and reality abound. Philosophical dialogue is at the heart of the process, and as children engage in dialogue, they're searching for meaning and trying to make sense of things. This strengthens critical thinking and reasoning skills and builds confidence and self-esteem. But developing a community of inquiry through dialogue is more than just asking better questions. Equally important is the development of reasoning and reflection, which connect with the social and emotional aspects of life. These, along with open-mindedness, create the conditions for change in both individuals and communities. This is a pedagogy that has links to other dialogical approaches, such as that in formative assessment, the work of Dylan William and Paul Black, or the work of Robin Alexander and Neil Mercer. But it's more than just a dialogical approach, and that's what we show in this DVD. Philosophical inquiry begins when we start to use language to learn about ourselves and our relationship to the world around us. When we begin to explore concepts and to ask difficult questions to which there is no obvious answer. A community of inquiry is a term coined by Professor Matthew Lipman to describe a method of exploring ideas together, and is related to Vygotsky's notion of the social construction of ideas, about collaborative thinking. As youngsters develop their community of inquiry, they necessarily begin to explore moral and ethical questions and their behaviours in relation to these. Emotional intelligence grows through this process, and this is very empowering and can lead to the point where informed choices can be made. Cognitive development results from practicing critical and creative thinking, and from the growing use of reason in an inquiry.
I was asked to take responsibility for the evaluation of the Thinking Through Philosophy programme, for devising that evaluation and for implementing it, which was seen as important in view of the investment of time and energy of our teachers. We used three main methods to evaluate what was happening. Firstly, we used standardised tests, reliable and valid measures to get some idea of whether there was any difference between how the children were before they started their participation in thinking through philosophy and how they were after they'd been taking part regularly for a period of time in that practice. Secondly, we used video recordings to get some idea of whether the nature of the classroom discussion had changed at all following weekly participation in philosophical inquiry. And thirdly, we used questionnaires to elicit some feedback from head teachers, class teachers, and particularly from the children themselves to get some idea of how they saw their particular experiences. So, what were the findings? What did we learn? Basically, we found changes in not only the cognitive intelligence, but also in the social-emotional intelligence of the children, and these relate to the way that children learn. There was one other important finding, and quite an unusual finding, in that we tracked the children right through into secondary education. The children had been considered first at the start of their primary six when they were approximately 10 years of age. They had been followed up initially towards the end of primary seven when they were approaching roughly 12 years of age, and were followed up when they were approaching roughly 14 years of age. Individual children were tracked down to their secondary schools and again completed the cognitive abilities tests. Now, despite the fact that they hadn't actually been participating in further inquiry, all their gains had been sustained over the 2-year period in their secondary education, which is a very interesting and encouraging result, because one of the concerns about thinking skills is the question, well, to what extent do they endure? What extent are they sustainable? So, in many ways, the future of Scottish education is encapsulated in a curriculum for excellence, which is about the aspiration that all children will become successful learners, effective communicators, responsible citizens, and confident individuals. Now, the sort of gains that we found in the evaluation of the Clackmannanshire programme would suggest that those very skills and abilities are very much supported by the process of philosophy for children in classrooms. And our finding would certainly be that there were some very significant gains, some slightly surprising gains through the process of inquiry, and that philosophical inquiry is, in the longer term, an excellent investment of time and energy of teachers, and very much consistent with the modern curriculum and the modern needs of children and young people.
The emerging curriculum for excellence makes it incumbent on us to think about the whole child and about a range of learning contexts, skills and dispositions. A philosophical inquiry approach naturally addresses many aspects of the 4 quadrants, as highlighted in red. The sustainability of the cognitive, social and emotional gains from the Thinking Through Philosophy programme, as described by Dr. Trickey, is illustrated in this graph. It charts the cognitive gain shown by those in the programme against a control group. After 2 years and on entering secondary school, the group received no further input, but after a further 2 years, the gains had been fully sustained, whereas the control group had slipped further. The children were at 3 different secondary schools.
Actually, quite quickly, we noticed changes in the children. Some of them being their ability to reason, to be clearer in their own understanding, basically, of probably their own understanding about their own emotions and their own feelings. They were certainly able to articulate these better. We noticed as they were able to articulate those feelings and communicate to others how they felt, With that there came a growing ability to reason and an increased ability to just to become, I think, more perceptive. That in turn, I believe, helped enhance self-esteem. So we did see those aspects developing quite quickly after the programme had been running for a relatively short period of time.
Philosophical inquiry can be practiced at any age and stage. Here, nursery children are developing language skills through critically thinking about a picture that has been used as a stimulus. Professor David Perkins at Harvard describes this as making thinking visible, a critical aspect in concept formation.
You think he might want a trolley to steal and to go home, so why would he be sitting in the aeroplane if he wanted a trolley?
Maybe wanted to jump off, grab him, that, and then cut it off and put money in it and go shooting and catch one.
So you think it might, if you put money in it, it might actually go away from where it's stuck, and he can push a trolley in front of him as well and take it home. Ah. Chloe, what do you think? Because you had an idea as well.
I think he's going to walk here by the trolley.
You think he's going to walk home with the trolley? And take a trolley with him?
I've got a friend and we've been friends for a really long time and we've never had an argument, so you don't always have to argue.
In the primary school context, children further build on the moral structure of an inquiry. For example, in learning to focus on the speaker, have respect for each other's views, and to try to be truthful with their contribution. And they also build the rational side of the inquiry by asking open and inviting questions, giving evidence and examples, seeking clarification, summarising and evaluating, and so on.
So sometimes things can go a little bit fast. But we're just going to think about things that we have been able to do that show good examples of really good thinking. One of the things in particular that has impressed me, what you've been able to do, is being able to change your mind. Laura, who's not here, and also I have to say James, has been able to do that, is being able to do that quiet reflecting and going, okay, I've really listened to what everybody else has said, and what I thought at the beginning of this, I'm not so certain that that's what I think now. And that really is an example of really good thinking, because very often when we're having any kind of discussion outside of these kind of lessons, we're very, very confrontational. And we say our piece and that's it, and that's all we want to say. And it's really, really hard to say, I was wrong.
In the secondary context, not only can existing skills continue to be developed, but more complex thinking can be practiced and honed. For example, through learning to draw deductive inferences, to be aware of inductive reasoning, or to analyse conditional statements, all leading to deeper, more rigorous inquiries and greater learning opportunities.
You've shown before that you're very, very good at listening to one another, respecting one another's opinions. Today, what I'm looking for is, can we build on other people's ideas? Okay? Is that okay? Go on. All right. The stimulus for today is one I think that you're going to like.
Philosophical inquiry is also increasingly used in a variety of community settings. Here, some primary children are joining with parents in an intergenerational inquiry to discuss a question about their village.
I think that's really right. What I was thinking of there when you were saying that about, because there are fines that are supposed to be, put in place when people do drop rubbish, but there's nowhere. It's not enforced. And nobody takes any notice of it. But if they, maybe they need to have a big crackdown and bring in, as well as the punishments, the reward system as well. But actually enforce it and find a way of enforcing it properly.
What is it that constitutes a community of inquiry? There are principles and practices involved. The principles include those mentioned earlier, such as respecting others' views, building an atmosphere of trust in which opinions can be freely given and listened to, and the importance of democracy. On the other
Double
hand,
amputee
there are common
conquered
practices
Everest
that
has
can help
spoken
create a
of the agonising
community.
decision not to
Sitting in a
walk the
circle
man
or horseshoe
who died
so
on
that
the
everyone
mountain.
can see each other.
Experienced
Establishing the
climber David
rules
Sharp has
collaboratively,
four of Guy's British
and the
sides
use
on
of
his way back from
protocols
the world's
to
highest
begin to
mountain
learn the
to
art of
confront
philosophizing.
difficulties. New Zealander Mark Inglis said his party saw Mr Sharp as they climbed the 29,028 foot or 8,500 metre peak. He said there was nothing they could do for him. Mr Inglis, 47, last week became the first double amputee to reach the top of Everest. His legs were amputated below the knee after he suffered frostbite during an expedition in 1982. Speaking to the Close-Up programme on New Zealand television, Mr Inglis said, "The trouble is that at 8,500 metres, it's extremely difficult to keep yourself alive, let alone keep anyone else alive."
Clearly, but also that we pay attention to
the person that's talking.
To other people, that we listen to them. It's very important that we hear what others have got to say. If we couldn't hear what others had to say...
Here, the teacher is working with a class new to P4C to establish the rules for the community. One way of doing this is to have some active group work to stimulate discussion about rules.
Now, we're going to do a little exercise here, and you'll see that I have a sheet, and on the sheet there's some words, and they say unhelpful, good, excellent, reasonable.
Cooperate with each other.
I think it should go maybe in between good and excellent.
Yeah. Have a laugh with your friends. I think it should go.
It depends though, because you can have a laugh with your friends out in the playground.
Yeah, but you can have it in the classroom.
What if when the teacher was talking, it wouldn't be, and you were having a laugh with your friends, it would be kind of
between here and there.
unhelpful. Speak when the teacher's speaking. I would think that is not very. It's not very helpful because she's trying to get on with work. Unhelpful.
Yeah. I've got everyone takes a turn. I think that should go in excellent.
Yeah, because
that's really good.
I've got cooperate.
That should go. I think that should go in excellent.
Yeah. Shouldn't it just go there because that's the same with it? Oh, right.
All right.
Could someone possibly tell me why they put cooperate with each other just at that particular point? What did you mean by that during a discussion? Yes, Shannon.
Well, we all agreed that cooperate with each other would go there because it's good. It's like in between good and excellent. So we thought it was...
Okay, what way did you think about cooperating with each other during the discussion? What sort of cooperation were you thinking about?
A difficulty for the novice facilitator is that many books and courses have what appears to be a rather rigid structure for developing a philosophical inquiry. This should be understood in the context of Dreyfus' model of rule-governed behaviour. As with all endeavours, the novice needs a clear structure and rules about how to begin facilitating. As expertise grows, these are internalised through experience, until at the expert stage, the context is read and use is intuitively made of those elements most needed. One should never be afraid to use a structure or a discussion plan. They are needed on the road towards proficiency.
Now let's start first of all just by being aware of our feet inside our shoes. And then feel the weight of your body sitting on the chair. Excellent, nice and still. Closing the skin. Nice and straight, good boy. And if you're very still, see if you can feel the air touching your face and your hands. Very good. Now just be aware of what's in front of you. Without moving, just see the shapes and the different colours.
There are various activities that can be used at the start of a session.
Whole room.
Here, the teacher is using a calming and focusing exercise
Right up to the ceiling.
to allow youngsters to put themselves in a good emotional and physiological state for good thinking.
Now let your listening run right out to the furthest and the softest sounds. Excellent, very good. Anyone like to say anything about that? How was that? How did you find that? How did you feel? Grant?
It felt quite relaxing.
Quite relaxing? More relaxed than before?
Yeah.
Yes, we were a bit nervous this morning, though, weren't we? Okay. Anyone else? Lauren?
I could hear the chairs getting moved about outside.
Could you? You're not normally aware of that, are you? Why were we so aware of that just now? Joanna?
Because we were concentrating.
We were focusing, we were concentrating, weren't we?
The first thing we're going to do is play a wee game to